Ohio Democrats are now rallying around the party's new presumptive presidential nominee. Ahead on Face the State, the delegation and convention director for the Ohio Democratic Party joins us in studio to explain why they were quick to back Vice President Kamala Harris in the race for the White House. Also, more housing and high-rises could soon pop up in Columbus. Coming up, I go one-on-one with the city's mayor to see how a major makeover could avoid a housing crisis in our booming city. Plus,
it's a hard thing to plan for your business when you don't know D-Day.
Businesses are trying to sell and people are eager to buy. Later, the ongoing battle to get recreational marijuana on the shelves and what's standing in the way.
And you all helped us win in 2020. And in 2024, we will win again.
Vice President Kamala Harris hit the ground running during her first week running for president. Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. After weeks of uncertainty following President Biden's shaky debate performance, he dropped out of the race last Sunday. Now, Vice President Harris has garnered the support of enough Democratic delegates to win the party's nomination for president. Ohio's delegates to the Democratic National Convention helped put her over the top. The Ohio Democratic Party says the Ohio delegation decided overwhelmingly to pledge their votes to Vice President Harris. Ohio has 144 delegates whose votes will go to her. State Senator Bill DeMora of Columbus is the delegation and convention director for the Ohio Democratic Party.
She's been vice president, she's been a senator, she's been a prosecutor, she's been attorney general. She is, we've never, for the first political party, ever nominated an African-American female to be our nominee for president. I think she's already shown the excitement of younger voters, of African-American voters, to motivate them to get more involved and to turn out and vote.
Ohio Democratic Party Chair Elizabeth Walters said Vice President Harris is a proven public servant who will be a strong fighter for Ohio's workers, and we're ready to get to work to make sure that she and the rest of our Democratic ticket wins in November. The Democratic National Convention starts August 19th, but the National Democratic Party still plans to hold a virtual roll call to officially nominate their presidential candidate before the convention, and of course, that looks to be Vice President Harris. In a special session this summer, Ohio legislators passed and the governor signed a law to ensure President Biden was on the ballot in Ohio. Now, this does still apply to Harris or whoever is nominated. It does not specify Biden in the legislative language. The law moved the deadline to certify a presidential candidate in Ohio from August 7th to September 1st after the Democratic convention. In fact, it simply states that the law delays the deadline for a major political party to certify its presidential and vice presidential candidates to the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's office confirmed to me that it applies to whoever the Democrats nominate. Senator DeMora says Democratic voters should feel confident they'll have a presidential candidate on the Ohio ballot.
I think if the Republicans try to find a loophole to keep the vice president off the ballot as our nominee for president, the voters will be heard.
And it may be moot. While Ohio lawmakers were having the debate about what had to be done to put Biden on the Ohio ballot is when the Democratic National Party said it would hold the virtual roll call by August 7th, which is Ohio's original deadline to certify a candidate. Joining me now to talk more about the Ohio delegation's support for Vice President Harris is State Senator Bill DeMora. Again, he is the delegation and convention director for the Ohio Democratic Party, but is not a delegate himself. Senator, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, sir, for having me here.
So let's talk a little bit about that conversation, the virtual meeting that the delegates had this week. It's described that the support was overwhelming for for Vice President Harris. Excuse me, she was a senator.
Yes.
Tell me about that conversation. How much excitement is there among the delegation for this?
I think there's a huge excitement. I think I said the other day, I am shocked how quickly she unified the party behind her. I thought we were going to drag this out to the convention and maybe have a convention like 1968, but we don't. And I think it's great that she has unified everybody in the Democratic Party. I mean, just this morning, or was it last night, President Obama and Michelle Obama endorsed her candidacy. So the Democratic Party is unified behind the vice president right now. And And I think that's exciting. As I said the other day, she's motivating young people. She's motivating African Americans. She just yesterday, I think there was 100,000 we'll call 100,000 white women were on a Zoom call and raised several $1 million for her. There's supposed to be 100,000 white men on a call on Monday. It's got an email for it today. So excitement is there around all for the vice president right now.
Does it surprise you at all how quickly it turned? Because we just didn't know well, it wasn't very long. We didn't know which direction this was going to go.
It does surprise me because obviously there were a lot of people before, right after the debate, when the president didn't perform all that well, there were, you heard 15 names out there of candidates who potentially wanted to be their nominee. And I think it's great that the vice president just kind of took the bull by the horns and now she's a nominee and everybody's endorsed her. There's no, from what I understand, last night they had nominating petitions out to the public, all the delegates. And from what I understand, I think the only person that got nominated was the vice president.
So what is the thing about her that made it an overwhelming level of support among the Ohio delegation to be the president?
Well, obviously she's very qualified. She's been vice president. She cast more tie votes in the Senate than any vice president in history in just 4 years. She was a U.S. senator. She was a prosecutor. She was a district attorney. She was Attorney General of California. She is, she's a very diverse person herself. She has a very diverse background, and I think the country is ready to just unify behind her. We had President Obama, and the country seemed to unify around him. All this excitement we had that President Obama carried Ohio twice, and I think Vice President Harris is going to do the same thing. I think she's going to carry Ohio and win the presidency again for the Democratic Party.
What do you think is going to happen with the vice presidential running mate? There are like 12 candidates.
If I had the answer to that, I could be a millionaire right now. I wouldn't have to be a state senator any longer. I think it's narrowed down to 3 or 4. I think that Bashir and Kelly.
Bashir from Kentucky.
Bashir from Kentucky, Kelly from Arizona. People keep throwing in Shapiro, but I think he's got some issues.
Pennsylvania.
From Pennsylvania. And then, Walt seems to be on everybody's list, but I just don't think he's the person. Tim Ryan's name has come up in some discussions before because he said he get calls to be vetted. So I think, my personal pick, I think is going to be Kelly, just because I think he brings so much to the ticket. But whoever it is, we're going to unify behind that person.
Former astronaut, it's got all of that. Gabby Giffords, right?
Right.
So what do you expect from the convention? You talked a little bit about it, but you thought it might be an open convention where there would be candidates vying for this, but it's not going to be that way.
No, as I said yesterday, the DNC sent out nominating petitions to all delegates, and our delegation, after a few glitches because they had wrong emails or they typed them in wrong, I spent several hours making sure our delegates got their email to get done the petition, signed the petition pledging their support for the vice president. In order for somebody to be considered to be our nominee, they need at least 300 signatures, no more than 50 from one state. And from what I understand, the vice president's the only person that's going to meet that criteria, and she will be our nominee.
Do you believe that President Biden ultimately made the right decision to step aside?
That's a tougher question. I love President Biden. I was with President Biden back in 1988 when I was in college. I thought he excited me the most back as a college student to be our president. And then things popped up and he had to drop out. I think Vice President Biden is the most genuine, empathetic, caring person who's ever held the White House. He and Jimmy Carter, I think, would tie for that in my mind. He did this, again, a sitting president stepped out of the race for the good of the country and the good of the party. And that just doesn't happen anymore in today's society. Everybody's a me, but he did this for the good of everybody. And I'm sad to see him go because he's been a great president. He got more accomplished for the divided Congress than anybody. And he's done a lot of good things for the country. He got us through the pandemic and a recession and, put money into people's pockets. We've had an economy growing every month since he's been president. The job market continues to be on fire. He's been a great president, and I love President Biden. And I'm sorry that he's not running again. But again, Vice President Harris is an exciting young candidate, and now the tables are turned on the Republican Party.
You mean with the age?
With the age thing, yes.
Yeah. Did you see the president's speech the other night from the Oval Office?
Unfortunately, I did not get home from doing things until well after the speech was over, and I feel bad I missed it, but I didn't get a chance to see it, no.
Yeah, you've only got, 4 jobs, I think
Yeah.
you told me.
Yeah.
All right, so, looking ahead, what do you think of Vice President Harris's chance of winning in November? This is a shorter window for her to be the focus of the campaign.
I think she has a great chance of winning. I think she's going to win. I think that all the things that were keeping President Biden behind in the polls are now gone. Nobody can say that
Vice President Harris is too old to be president. No one can say that Vice President Harris's mental faculties aren't all there. No one can say those things anymore because it's absolutely not true. I mean, she's just a few years older than you and I. She obviously is shown in the last several days a kind of energy that the party maybe needed. And I think she's going to win all those key states. I think she's motivating those people that stay home on election day, and it keeps Democrats from winning more races in Ohio and across the country. She's motivating those people to come out and vote, and I think they're going to come out and vote. And I think we're going to have a historic election.
Senator Bill DeMora, thank you so much for your time and perspective today, and hopefully we'll talk to you before the convention to talk about how all of that is taking shape.
Absolutely, Doug. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, you're welcome. Well, now to the Republican side. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance came back to Middletown, Ohio for his first rally in the Buckeye State as former President Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. He held the hometown rally exactly 1 week after being chosen at the Republican National Convention. He used part of his speech to go after Vice President Kamala Harris.
When I see her give a speech, and she talks about the history of this country, not with appreciation, but with condemnation. And look, of course, every country, just like every family, certainly mine, has its pockmarks, right? Not everything's perfect, it's never gonna be, but if you wanna lead this country, you should feel grateful for it. You should feel a sense of gratitude. And I never hear that gratitude come through when I listen to Kamala Harris.
The senator didn't give any examples of what he was talking about there. Now, Vance graduated from Middletown High School in 2003. About 900 people packed into the auditorium. They started lining up at around 7 o'clock Monday morning in the rain. Hundreds more couldn't get in, but Vance addressed them before going inside. Once on the stage, he told his hometown crowd what Middletown means to him.
My life wasn't all that different from a lot of people who grew up in Middletown, Ohio. It was tough, but it was surrounded by loving people, and it was surrounded by something that if we don't fight is not going to be around for the next generation of kids, and that's opportunity. Middletown had opportunity, and we got to make sure it's there for the next generation.
He also criticized the Biden-Harris administration policies that he says hurt workers. He said he and Trump will support American energy production, close the border, and bring back manufacturing from China.
Your children deserve the inheritance of this country. And the inheritance of this country is that their lives will be better than their parents, and their children's lives even better than that. That is the American dream that we fight for, and I will never stop fighting for that American dream.
Vance also joked that he's upset he won't get to debate Vice President Harris now that she's the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee. He spoke for about 40 minutes and had another rally in Virginia later that evening. Preventing a massive housing crisis in the near future. Coming up next on Face the State, why Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther says doing something the city hasn't done in nearly a century is the answer to avoiding a housing crisis. Plus, a push to end gerrymandering will now be on Ohio's ballot in November. But what exactly would it do? We'll break down the proposed amendment you'll soon be able to vote on next. Welcome back to Face the State. The city of Columbus is expected to do something it hasn't done in nearly 70 years, change its zoning code. City Council will vote on the new proposal tomorrow. It's a huge focus because the city says it will need 200,000 new housing units in the next decade just to keep up with demand, something Mayor Andrew Ginther says it's difficult to achieve with the current zoning codes. These new codes would allow for the development of taller mixed-use buildings. Leaders say this could help create 88,000 new homes as opposed to only 6,000 homes the way the codes are written now. Plus, developers will be able to build even taller if they designate 20 to 30% of the properties to affordable housing. With this major vote just 1 day away, I sat down with Mayor Andrew Ginther in his office to see what the vision is for the city's future and how leaders plan to accomplish it. I started by asking, why is this update necessary in the first place?
Absolutely critical. You know, we continue to grow. At the end of last year, we were one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and we haven't built enough housing in our community since before the Great Recession. This issue's just kind of compounded over the last 10 or 15 years. And what happens in communities is when you grow rapidly and you don't build enough housing, you have a supply crisis. You go back to Econ 101, if your supply is flat and demand continues to grow, your prices are going to go up. And so, just when you look at another city similar to Columbus between 2010 and 2020, Minneapolis is one that comes to mind. Their growth in households went up 10%. Their housing went up 12%, increased by 12%, so their rents only grew by 1%. During that same period of time in Columbus, our population in number of households grew 15%, but our housing only grew at 13%. And so our rents increased by 30%. And that's an extension for home prices and everything else. So what we need as a community is to increase in the region about 200,000 housing units over the next 10 to 15 years to try to remain affordable for folks. And Zone In is the first major zoning code overhaul we've done in 70 years.
Why did it take 70 years to get to this?
Well, if you look around the country, changing zoning is very challenging, complicated, takes a certain amount of both community and political will in leadership. I mean, for most folks, the zoning impacts their home, one of the biggest investments and assets that they hold. It impacts where people work, if they're a small business owner, where you worship. I mean, the real core of neighborhood quality of life. And so we've been doing this very thoughtfully and working on this for a couple of years. And we're really proud of the proposal because this first set of changes will focus on the major corridors around town. So you think about High Street, Broad Street, Parsons Avenue, Cleveland Avenue, major corridors, because we know from our neighborhood plans and input from the community, that's where we can achieve the greatest density and height. And we know those are the two biggest contributors to affordability.
You mentioned the 200,000 units needed over the next decade. Will Columbus not only be able to keep up with the growth, but then now also make up for the shortfall?
It's critically important. That's why we get to act now. That's why I'm, so passionate about this. There is a sense of urgency. This is our moment. This is our window. There are cities all over the country that have had dramatic growth in a short period of time that waited too long to act. And those are places right now that are having incredible increases in housing costs. So the people that make their communities go, cops, firefighters, teachers, nurses, bus drivers, they can't afford to live in the cities and communities they're serving because there isn't enough housing and the prices are too high. So they're forced to longer commutes, further away from their kids, their neighborhoods, their schools, their places of worship. And we want to grow. Growth is coming. That's no longer up for debate or discussion. We're going to grow by a third. We want to do it in a dynamic and inclusive way. We want to do it in a way that regardless of what you do for a living, that you can afford to live in the community that you serve in.
It seems the proposal is geared, as you mentioned, to building up and with density. Mm-hmm. What does it provide for making it possible for people to achieve home ownership?
It's going to be a multifaceted approach. As you know, our code currently, for all the parcels in the city of Columbus, overwhelmingly, the zoning code reflects single-family ownership and single-family development. We believe that multifamily has a critically important component. We know both younger people and seniors who want to live in neighborhoods of their choice need to have a variety of options, so it can't just be a single-family approach to things. We also know that we can get more units along these corridors, and there's a direct connection to the Link Us issue, the transit issue that's on the ballot in the fall. Those corridors that we're proposing the zoning code changes for, line up perfectly with the transit corridors.
So the focus is, though, on right now in phase one, on rental properties.
On the corridors, and it will include single family, it will include multifamily condos, multifamily apartments. In essence, it allows more options and flexibility on these corridors so that we can get the density and height we need to make them more affordable.
Now, critics of the zoning proposal say Columbus is kind of taking like a Texas approach to it and catering to private interests and big developers. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I think there are faith leaders that we met with just yesterday. There are affordable housing advocates. There are neighborhood and community leaders that have engaged in this process for the last several years that welcome the change. I mean, there are young people who are having challenges finding housing right now, whether it's for rent or for purchase. They're young professionals with great jobs. They're still finding it very difficult to reach that 20% they need for a down payment or getting the financing they need. So we know that if we dramatically increase the supply, we make it more affordable for everybody.
And again, Columbus City Council will vote on the zoning overhaul tomorrow. Now back to the November election. Here in Ohio, voters will get to decide who draws Ohio's political maps. Secretary of State Frank LaRose says a bipartisan initiative submitted more than 500,000 signatures to meet the requirement to be on the November ballot. The Ohio Ballot Board has to sign off on it now. The goal of the proposed constitutional amendment is to put the map-making process in the hands of citizens instead of politicians. Here's how that would work. It would create a 15-member commission to draw the maps. There would be 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 5 independents on it. Current or former politicians, as well as political party officials and lobbyists, will not be allowed to be on the commission. It would make it unconstitutional to draw districts that favor either or any one party. And it would operate under an open and independent process. Recreational marijuana, it's been legal for some time in Ohio, but there's still nowhere to legally buy it. Still ahead on Face the State, we're taking a closer look at why it's nowhere to be found and what dispensaries are waiting for. It's now been nearly 8 months since voters passed Issue 2 legalizing recreational marijuana in Ohio. And still, there's nowhere to legally buy it and no definite date for sales to begin. 10 TV's Colin Dorsey explains why this is still the case even after 25 facilities have been granted a certificate of operation.
None of those certificates of operations went to dispensaries like these. Instead, they went to the places growing, processing, and testing the marijuana. Even today, there was a sign out front that said, "Sorry guys, no recreational sales yet."
It's a hard thing to plan for your business when you don't know D-Day.
Hurry up and wait. That's been the name of the game for the folks in the marijuana business. In all, 420 applications were submitted to get into the recreational side. Most applications were for medical marijuana businesses looking to get dual-use permissions. One of those being Cresco Labs, which operates a massive facility in Yellow Springs.
And the whole supply chain has to be licensed for dual use, meaning for medical consumers and adult use over the age of 21, and that includes the cultivators, the labs, and the dispensaries, which will be the last to be approved.
The state says cultivators, processors, and testing labs like those in Yellow Springs are less complicated and easier to sign off on than dispensaries. Cresco Labs storefronts are Sunnyside dispensaries. The company spokesperson Jason Erkes says while they can't sell recreational marijuana, they can prepare the product.
We can take our products and ship them to dispensaries that will be able to sell them when they're licensed as well.
He says they're feeling confident the day is coming, saying the state has started doing inspections at dispensaries.
We're inching closer. I don't think anybody could circle a date on the calendar, but I would think it's in the coming weeks.
The Division of Cannabis Control says there's no single date when recreational sales will begin. That will be different everywhere as those operational certificates are issued. In downtown Columbus, Colin Dorsey, 10 TV News.
And that is all of our time for this Sunday. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. We'll see you back here next Sunday at 11:30.